Please take your seats. I'd like to get our Business Affairs and Administrative Committee on the road here. It's been a long enough evening. Got everybody here? Ooh, I don't see Miss Campbell. Is she here? We've got to wait for her. We need her. Okay. Hey, Miss Campbell. It's okay. Would you like to call roll for us, please?
Mr. Green,
Here.
Mrs. Heinz, Mr. Derman, Mr. Loop, Mr. Harrell, Mr. Nation, Mrs. Richardson, Mr. Winkler, Mrs. Baker, Mr. Betancourt.
Be here.
Okay, Mrs. Lamy, Mr. Hersey, Mr. Bro,
Here.
Mr. Kuzan,
Here.
Mrs. Page.
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. We'll dispense with the invocation and pledge since we did that in our prior committee meeting. Would any board members like to recognize visitors? I don't see anybody. We've got no one signed up for 5 minutes. Ms. Hickman is our first person for 3 minutes.
Bear with me. I'm going to be reading what my son would have read tonight if he had not had to go to the doctor. Hello, my name is Justin Bleeker. I am from Slidell. For those of you that do not know, I have a speech impairment and a reading disability. My words may be broken. In 2007 and 2008 school year, I was raped by the janitor at school. If there would have been cameras in the classrooms and in the hallways, someone would have seen that something was wrong. If the background check on the janitor had been taken seriously, then I may have never been raped, or the other 13 kids may not have been hurt as well. The process of handling the background check clearly failed. This happened 14 years ago. I unsealed my case so that the truth could come out. I did not unseal the case for no changes to occur. We have provided the proof of these wrongdoings. This board hired a superintendent that will not do what is right by removing these employees. I have stood up here and pleaded with you, and nothing has been done. Clearly, I am a person with disabilities and can see what is right and what is wrong. I clearly would remove anyone that failed to do their jobs and caused so many children to be hurt. I have stood up here and pleaded my heart out, and yet nothing has been done. I come over and over and repeat myself. I want background checks done the right way. I want those who failed to do their jobs removed. I want proof that background checks are being done. That is not too much to ask, especially considering what I have been through. I have gone through a criminal trial and dealt with that. I have gone through years of attorneys from this school system trying to get me to agree to settle and not to talk. No one wanted me to talk about all the things that was done wrong. Can you tell me what good does it do by not talking about what was done wrong? Yes, I had agreed and went away and I agree. I don't know what he meant to say here. Is that what you all want, is for the victims just to go away and not talk? Now that you know that I am not going anywhere and that I want changes, what is going to happen? If no one makes an effort to make these changes happen, then I will be speaking out to communities so that when it's time to vote for new board members, it will be said who truly stepped up to help make these changes that is needed. I plan on continuing this fight for change. We need to come together to work at putting our children's safety first. Let's start with the removal of the employees that failed to do their jobs and have failed me and 13 other kids. Yes, no, none of you can do this. And you need to speak up and give the one that has the power to do so. Stop listening to me and ask for removal and tell me and my mother who can do this. Clearly, nothing is being done. I am also aware
Thank you,
that
Ms. Hickman. Next up for 3 minutes is Ms. Stephanie Underwood.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Underwood. I'm a teacher at Lancaster and recently elected executive vice president of the union. We transfer power soon. But I wanted to take some time to thank all the members who came out to vote on April 20th and to congratulate and recognize some of our newly elected slate members that are here tonight. First, I wanted to recognize and congratulate Brant Osborne, who's a teacher at Slidell High, and the newly elected president. He's exactly the right person to lead our slate and a person I am extremely excited to get to assist and work next to. Next, I want to recognize Demina McCoy. She is our second vice president, teacher at Covington High. Next, Leslie Gross-Smith, secretary. She's a teacher at Abney Elementary. Next, Michael Adams, treasurer, teacher at Madisonville Junior High. Next would be Latasha Brownlee, parliamentarian, teacher at Bayou Lacombe Middle. And finally, the last person that's here tonight, but not the least, Sherelle Griffin, a delegate teacher at Brock Elementary. So I'm very excited to work with these people, and we're excited to work with all of y'all as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Underwood. Next up for 3 minutes is Ms. Escamilla.
Good evening, board members and Mr. Superintendent. My name is Haley Jean Escamilla. I'm here tonight to talk about student safety and sexual education. Looking at me, you might think to yourself, what does a 17-year-old girl know about sexual education? If you find yourself thinking about this, I want you to remember I'm here to talk about student safety. You might ask yourself, what does St. Tammany Pare's comprehensive sexual education curriculum have to do with student safety? The lack of representation of LGBT communities within the comprehensive sexual education is harmful to students. According to the Oxford Dictionary, comprehensive is the inclusion of all facts and information. The curriculum that we have is not comprehensive. The exclusion and erasure of LGBTQ plus communities in favor of cisgendered hetero ways of being results students in like me that are queer feeling like we are erased and diminished. Diminishing our existence results in students feeling unheard and unseen. This can cause depression, anxiety, the feeling of isolation, and sometimes suicides. According to the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, students that are part of the LGBTQ plus community are at a significant higher risk of engaging in dangerous sexual practices, including unprotected sex. They are also significantly more likely to be victims of sexual violence, including grooming by sexual predators and sex trafficking. The danger of this is especially felt for Black trans women. The lack of representation also affects our cisgendered hetero students. By erasing the LGBTQ plus community, you are You are failing to normalize our humanity. When our humanity is not normalized, we become easy targets for bullying at the hands of our peers. I'm asking you all to do a comprehensive review of the sexual education curriculum, and I demand that we bring it up to date so that it is inclusive to all students, so that we are no longer neglecting our peers and harming and risking students. Thank you for your time, Super Board.
Next is Mr. Escamilla.
Good evening again. I talked to you earlier about consent and the lack of education in consent and safe sex practices and sexual violence in our comprehensive sex education program. As you just heard, my daughter also spoke about the lack of representation. The risk of not having a truly comprehensive sex education program for high school students is not that our students aren't going to have sex. It's that they're not going to know how to have safe sex. You're not actually eliminating the possibility of our students being sexually active. They're 17-year-olds. One of my favorite television shows talks about the fact that if you show an average teenage boy a lug wrench, his mind turns to lust, right? It's hormonal. That's what we experience as human beings. Not talking about it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It just means that you're not going to be prepared to do it safely and responsibly. And by excluding members of the student body that happen to be LGBTQ, you're actually putting them at significantly greater risk of engaging in risky safe sex behavior. That's from the surveys that the federal government does every single year, the Youth Risk Behavior Analysis Survey. Any action that we take as a school system should be to center the safety of our students. And if your argument is we need to teach abstinence and abstinence only, fine. But the reality is that by erasing these communities, you're not teaching them not to have sex. You're telling them that their safety and their presence isn't of value in our system. And that does result in them taking risky behaviors to feel included, to feel wanted, to feel like they're part of a community. And that can result in them taking risky behaviors with their sexual practices. And so by not talking about it, you're not teaching them to not be gay. They are gay. You're not teaching them to not be trans. They are trans. What you're teaching them is that you don't want to deal with their problems. You don't want to deal with their reality. You don't want to deal with their existence. And the inevitable result of that is that they try to figure out how to deal with their existence. They try to figure out how to deal with their realities. And they're children. They need guidance. So we do need to review the comprehensive sex ed program, as my daughter has just explained. If for no other reason than because the information in it is actually wrong. Not just from an inclusive standpoint, but from the fact that it perpetuates this narrative that marriage is between one man and one woman, which you might hold personally, but legally, that is not the standing of our system. It also, again, as I've said, doesn't actually address the potential for rape. So think about those things.
Next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from the committee as a whole meeting held on April 1st, 2021. Do I have a motion? Mr. Betancourt, Mr. Loop seconds that motion. Do I have any comments from the public? Seeing none, do I have any from the board? Nope. Let's please vote on that item. That motion carries 11 yeas, 0 nays, 1 abstention. Next item on our agenda is recommending acceptance of the district handbook for students and parents for the 2021-2022 school year. Mr. Kosei.
Thank you, Mr. Green. The annual meeting of the St. James Parish School System Discipline Review Committee
was held on Wednesday, March the 10th, 2021, in the Fontainebleau High School Library. Supervisor Administration Christian Munson led the meeting with Supervisor Administration Larry Rout in attendance. The discipline committee, consisting of administrators, teachers, special ed teachers, parents, and students, voted on proposed changes to the current handbook policy. The proposed changes were sent to you via board docs for your review. Mr. Munson and I are available for any questions tonight.
Are there any questions for Mr. Kosei? Yes, there will be time for public comments. Thank you. Mr. Durham?
Mr. Kosei, are we removing I'm looking at the one for flip-flops and backless sandals. We're taking that out that they can be worn? Is that what?
Correct.
Okay. I thought that was like a safety thing in case we had an emergency that the shoes wouldn't come off. I'm just curious.
It's committee's decision. I don't know what the committee's discussion was. I was not there, but.
It did come up in discussion, but on the flip side, they talked about high heels. We don't regulate kids wearing high heels and safety issues as well. The talk with the flip-flops was when the policy was written, shoes have evolved so much and there's so many different variations of it that the administrators and parents, everyone felt that it would be okay to wear them because there's so many different variations of sandals that kids wear these days.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kuzan?
Could you explain the hair must be a natural occurring color?
So this is just cleaning some language up. We just felt like the previous where hair must be clean, not unusually colored. We felt like that was subjective on every different campus. So the hair must be of naturally occurring color. So someone that, so just to make it less subjective, let's put it that way.
So what you're saying is that the hair must be one color?
It's got to be naturally occurring. So
a student couldn't have a black and black hair and a red color in
no,
hair?
highlights and all that stuff are fine. What it is
Okay.
if a student had something that's just not naturally occurring, that's, and if
Can you give me some examples of something that's not naturally colored?
blue, green, purple, something that's just not naturally.
I think what clears it up is it can be, it doesn't have to be their natural color. It has to be a natural occurring color.
Hair color.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Any public comments? Oh, boy. Who wants, Ms. Branch, did you want to comment on this, or I saw your hand up first, that's why I was asking.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for interrupting before.
Yeah, please come to the podium.
I apologize. I hope to become quite acquainted with these processes soon. And I didn't do my homework on this handbook, but is there language in the handbook that makes the adoption of Google Chromebooks and Google Classroom permanent, or something that we as parents can't opt out of? I don't know if that was part of the handbook or if that's something that's going to be integrated in.
I'm not sure we're speaking directly to an agenda item here. I'm not.
Oh, I thought we were talking about the handbook, the adoption of the 2021-2022 handbook. I wasn't sure if the Google Classroom and Google Platform was, oh, a discipline handbook. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Barrios?
Lee Barrios, retired teacher. I just couldn't let this go. I endured through this when my 3 kids were in school, the whole dress code thing. And then as a teacher, it was no better as a teacher, even when uniforms were instituted. But the biggest issues as a parent and as a teacher was always that these dress codes are selectively applied. And I think you even stated in there, which I questioned, that it's up to the principal at a particular school on some of the issues. That doesn't seem right. I know way back when my two oldest boys were in school and the long hair was the deal. And one of them was sent home because his hair was at the collar. And this particular principal was very picky. And that whole year, they went through this whole boys' hair thing. And yet they had male teachers with ponytails. Anyway, the flip-flop thing, this just goes to show you how something that we've put kids out of school for are now considered okay for whatever reason. The whole flip-flop thing, that is a safety issue. So I really don't get that, especially the younger kids when they're running and somebody steps on the back of their shoe. I mean, you're opening yourself up for a lawsuit, I would think. And the other thing was, I too think the wording is terrible on the must be a natural color. For some people, that may imply that if it's not your natural color, like if a guy has naturally black hair and he wants to have the really light blonde, which that could be a natural color for some people, really extremely blonde and, you know, black at the roots and gets yellow at the tips if you don't take care of it. I mean, the whole hair issue color thing is just, I hope that you all vote, somebody makes an amendment to that or something, because it's just, because if it's in the book and it's a rule and you're giving principals the ability to determine, you're going to have kids that are singled out, you're going to have kids that are sent home or whatever the discipline measure is for something that can change tomorrow or something that's not, it's not across the board instituted. And since we have so much standardization in academics, why can't we have standardization in the way rules are kept? Thank you.
Board members, again, I want to remind you that this was a committee decision made up of students, parents. There's a whole lot of people on this committee, so I just want to be very clear. This was not, this isn't a bunch of principals sitting in a room dreaming up stuff they want to do. So I want to be clear on that.
And I've seen many, many changes through the years of this handbook. Society changes, and usually that's a reflection of some societal changes that take place, but it's also a reflection of St. Timothy Parish typically. And I wanted to make that clear too, that committee is made up of St. Timothy Parish individuals, and a lot of times you're aligned with the type of community we have here in St. Timothy Parish.
Hello. As you can see, I don't have a natural hair color. I haven't had a natural hair color for about a year now. And I do this for mental health reasons, for religious reasons. And in the handbook, it says very clearly you cannot have hair like mine. You can't have non-natural hair color. And when you're doing that, you're taking things like my beliefs of having bodily autonomy away from me. You are, where I do this for my mental health, you are taking that away from me and forcing children to fit into this compounded box. And it's not just the hair, it's also piercings, it's also clothing. And when you're trying to force kids to fit into this compounded societal box that you want them to be, you're taking away children's bodily autonomy, you're taking away their freedom of expression. And I think that things like this should not be something you're so concerned about. If you're concerned about a child's hair color, or if a child has a nose piercing in, you have your problems very, very out of line. The problems that you should be concerned about is if the child is passing their classes, if the child is not getting abused at home, if the child is learning what they're supposed to be learning. Those are the things that the schools and the school boards should be concerned about, not what our hair color looks like, not if we're wearing this specific type of shoe or this specific type of jacket or this piercing or whatever. The things that you guys are prioritizing aren't things that should be prioritized. If I have purple or blue or green or pink hair, that's my choice. I'm the one that's paying for it. None of you are, and that shouldn't be your guys' decision. You guys shouldn't be taking that decision away from me because you feel it should be a certain way. And that is not fair to so many students that you guys want to fit into this societal little box. Thank you.
If I can make one other comment as well, we do have a process to review exemption requests for dress and grooming. Administration reviews.
Thank you, Mr. Kosei.
Ms. Cook, I appreciate you bringing that up because she took that process. You know what it resulted in? She has to wear a hoodie at school all day. That or a hat. Are hats in the dress code? Oh, yeah, they are. You're not supposed to wear a hat either. So in order to enforce one dress code policy, will violate another dress code policy. She has colored hair. I want to apologize to the board. I didn't know that the color of her hair was that disruptive to the learning environment. I hope all of you have been able to focus on your duties with a child with purple hair in the room. I'm sure that it's been difficult for you to manage to corral your attention. But she's been like that all year. Half of the year, they didn't make her wear a hood while she was going through this review process. You know what happened? None of the students complained. None of the teachers complained. The only people that complained were the principals. That's it, because it's a rule. Not because she was disrupting the classrooms, not because she was failing, not because every single day it was a different color of fuchsia, simply because it's a rule in the handbook. And so she went through the process. She took the process that was afforded to her. She made her arguments based off of her constitutional right that she feels she has, based off of her religious beliefs that she chooses to practice, based off of her mental health needs that she supported with medical documentation. And it didn't go to a board of teachers. It didn't go to a board of students. It didn't go to a board of principals or SPED coordinators. It went to the school board's lawyers who said, well, she does have those rights. We can't force her to change her hair color, but you might try making her wear a hat. We might get away with that. That's the intent of the advice from the lawyers. And it wasn't a situation of, should we consider the advice of the lawyers or should we not consider the advice of the lawyers? No, it was, well, the lawyers have told us this, and so we're going to try to do it. Simply because it was a rule that you wanted to enforce. And that's bizarre to me. As an educator, that's bizarre to me. As somebody who works with teachers, that's bizarre to me. And as a parent, it's incredibly bizarre to me that a school would say this rule is so important that she not have unnaturally colored hair because it might disrupt the learning environment. That hasn't happened for 3 months, that we're going to make her wear a hat. But guess what? The rule for wearing a hat also exists because wearing hats might disrupt the learning environment. So we're so concerned that she might disrupt the learning environment that will violate a rule that might disrupt the learning environment. It doesn't make sense. These rules actually need to be brought before a public hearing. And Ms. Barrios mentioned it earlier. I had no idea that the handbook was up for review. I would have loved to have gone to those meetings. I would have loved to make comments. I would have loved to talk to the people who are making those decisions. I bet my daughter would have as well. I bet many students in this school system would have loved to address those individuals. But that didn't happen because we didn't know that the discussion was going on. So think about that when you're deciding to vote for this, and perhaps maybe make an amendment that actually creates a system where students can appeal for these rules. And instead of trying to find a way to make the rule apply, the standard practice is, if we're going to allow the exemption, we just allow the exemption and the rule doesn't apply to that student.
Are there any other public comments on this agenda item? If not, the public comments section is closed. I'll ask the board if there's any other final comments to this agenda item. Mr. Derman? No. Okay, we have a motion to amend, or we have an amended motion to accept the district handbook with the exception of the hair must be of natural occurring color. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Kuzan seconds that motion. Any board discussion? Mr. Betancourt.
Yeah, I'm wondering about, can we do a flip-flop on the flip-flops? That's, that just seems like Mr. Derman said earlier, a safety issue and all, and I just can't picture allowing flip-flops unless you want to explain that, how that came to be again? Because I didn't hear you with that mask on.
So, let me find my notes. So the discussion, and it was actually brought up by the students that they felt like the way shoes have evolved. So when you think of flip-flops, like the student representative from one of the high schools had on shoes, and she said, well, these would be illegal. And they were like dress sandals that you would, most girls wear, that why couldn't they wear those? And a safety issue came up. Actually, it was come up with a school that had a second floor and said, well, if my kids have to go up and down the steps, a safety issue. And a teacher from one of the junior highs said, what happens if they have 6-inch high heels and they have to get out of there? So we're looking at a safety issue on one side versus the other. So it was brought up, but they said that the way flip-flops have evolved, or sandals, backless sandals. So a kid that may have on Crocs that has no back to them is disciplinarian. You walk up and you say, hey, you're out of dress code. And all of a sudden they pull a little back on it and it's got a backing to it. So it's illegal. So shoes have kind of evolved into not just the thong sandals that we think about going to the beach. There's so many different variations of it. That was from what the committee said.
Well, I can see the Crocs with the back strap on it. That keeps the thing from, kind of eliminates it from being a flip-flop. I just, I don't know. I can see students wanting to wear flip-flops. I just kind of disagree with that.
Mr. Betancourt, it becomes a enforcement issue. It puts the principals in a quandary. So the point is, anything that's backless, where do you draw the line if it's backless? If it doesn't have a back on it, where do you draw the line? So what qualifies as a flip-flop to somebody may be a sandal to somebody else. So that's the issue with, I think the committee, even with the students, they were trying to clear up that shoes are acceptable. Basically, a shoe on is acceptable because who's going to draw, what's the delineation between a Birkenstock, if you're familiar with a Birkenstock, what that looks like, and a sandal that has no back, or a flip-flop? I mean, the principal, the administrator, the disciplinarian is in a quandary. I mean, who's going to draw the line? So I guess that's the point, is the committee, the students, they were saying, why have this debate? A child has shoes on, they have an adequate shoe on that it should work. So I believe that's where it originated, and that's where it came from, was just the quandary that an administrator would be in.
All right, I'm not familiar. What did you say? A broken sock? What?
A Birkenstock.
What, I don't know.
It's a slip-on shoe. It's basically a slip-on shoe.
Like a Croc?
It's a little bit dressier Croc.
Okay.
It's a church Croc.
Was there?
Yeah, it's hard to explain. Potato shoe. Somebody said a potato shoe. If you
Was there any?
So just a point
discussion
of parliamentary procedure real quick, Mr. Betancourt. Are we, Mr. Derman has an amended motion. We had a second by Mr. Kuzan. How do we?
Well, I really didn't have an amended motion. That was my motion.
Well, okay. So, all right. So do we have a request for an amendment, and how do we handle that?
Well, that's what I'm getting to, is the request to add the flip-flop thing, but I wanted a little bit more understanding. I don't know, maybe we should just let them go barefoot. That's enough, because I'm not actually speaking to the motion. Okay. Thank y'all for trying to explain it to me, and also the broken sock thing.
Just for sake of clarity, I would recommend that Mr. Derman remove, and, in other words, make his motion again for how he wants to amend be a second and then vote on that amendment. And then if Mr. Bettencourt chooses that he could make his own motion to amend, because he really had a discussion in the middle of the motion.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So our motion on the floor by Mr. Derman is to amend the district handbook to remove the,
My motion was to accept the recommendation for hair must be a natural occurring color.
okay, thank you.
That was my motion.
And then, yeah, so that's the motion on the floor. Mr. Kuzan was second that motion. So we have board discussion. Ms. Page.
I was just curious, Mr. Derman, so just to clarify, so if we take that out, then students can come to school with whatever color they want, like purple and green.
Ms. Page,
I'm not sure. I'm just clarifying.
assuming that this was something that was put in there from the before, because I don't see where it says anything about the hair color before. Is that right, Mr. Kosai?
No, sir, you have the current handbook there with you as well, which,
Clean and not unusually colored.
that's the way it was worded before, correct. It's on page, let's see, it's 18.
Okay, well, my problem is, and it's kind of what some of us had talked about with the description of the hair being of natural occurring color. Well, whose natural occurring color are we talking about?
It currently reads, hair must be clean and not unusually colored. And the committee was changing it again to hair must be of a natural occurring color.
And my point being is when we're talking about being subjective, are we talking about somebody that has blonde hair that really isn't a blonde? And then somebody that's black-headed that has gray hair? Or are we talking about somebody with blue hair? I'm just saying it's kind of arbitrary.
It's my understanding the committee is wanting to, whereas if a blonde wants to change their hair to become a redhead, they can do that. Because it's a naturally occurring color. Am I correct?
Naturally occurring color in the color spectrum for hair.
For hair. Yes, sir.
Not, well, then why doesn't it say that?
It would have to be that entire, she would have to have the entire head that same color. In other words,
No, sir, you can have highlights if they're natural different colors. Some ladies, if I'm using the ladies for an example, may have reddish highlights with their brunette hair. If it's a naturally occurring red and it's not hot pink, I guess you could call it, then it would, it's a naturally occurring color, Mr. Kuzan.
I'm just gonna leave my motion in where it is. If it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
it's too much judgment involved.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
So we are adding the motion that accepts the handbook of students and parents for the 2021-2022 school year and amend it to remove the hair color requirement.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. Any questions from the public, comments from the public? We've kind of discussed this. I don't see any, so that closes public comments. So let's please vote on this motion. Sure, Mr. Bettencourt. Do we have a tally, Ms. Campbell? Okay. How are we looking? Ms. Campbell, are we waiting on someone? Ah, there we go. Okay. So that's a tie. So what now? The motion fails? Yeah, so the motion fails, Mr. Bro.
I move we accept the proposal as the committee recommended.
Ms. Page seconds that motion. Mr. Bro makes a motion to accept the district handbook as presented originally. Ms. Page has a second. Are there any comments from the public? Mr. Escamilla, 2 minutes, sir.
I won't relitigate the hair coloring thing, but I will say that part of your mandate as a board is to avoid litigation, and passing policies that restrict the First Amendment rights of students for the possibility of avoiding potential disruptions that might never occur and have no history of occurring within the school district is actually a violation of their First Amendment rights. You might not see it that way, but there is actual court law that actually does support that. And the reality is that part of your jobs as elected officials is to avoid getting the school district sued. And just because I, as a parent, can't afford to get a lawyer to sue you doesn't mean that no one can. And it certainly doesn't mean that the ACLU won't. Continuing to violate students' First Amendment rights does put you at risk of a lawsuit. So it's just something to consider in your roles as elected officials coming up to, election day.
Thank you, Ms. Barrios.
I believe it bypassed Mr. Betancourt's desire to make an amendment before you allow Mr. Broad to make a motion to accept it. So I'm just wondering if Mr. Betancourt wanted to then take his opportunity to amend it about the flip-flops. Thank you.
Mr. Betancourt, are you flip-flopping on the flip-flops? Okay, he's reverse flip-flopping on the flip-flop. He just reversed the flip-flop on you. We're back to Mr. Bro's motion. Any other comments from the public? Any comments from the board? Seeing none, let's please vote. That motion carries 9 yeas, 3 nays. Next on the agenda, Mr. Kosei, our monthly maintenance and custodial report.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Board members, your monthly maintenance and custodial report is in your board doc packet, and I have Mr. Wade Gottschalk and his crew that are here to answer any questions with regard to that report.
Any questions for Mr. Gottschalk? None. Risk management report.
Mr. Kurt Gaspard, our risk manager, is here to answer any questions relative to his report, his monthly report.
Any questions for Mr. Gaspard? Not this evening. And our transportation report.
And your monthly transportation report is before you as well. I do have Ms. Donnell Buell and Ms. Lisa Lewis that are here that may answer any questions you have regarding that report.
Any questions in regards to transportation? None? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kosei.
Thank you.
Ms. Tipton, sorry.
Thank you. Our first item on the agenda is consideration of bids for Lee Road Junior High School additions and renovations. St. Tammany Parish School Board project is number 1950. We received those bids on April the 27th, and that is uploaded to, the bid tab is uploaded to board docs. We're recommending the acceptance of the low base bid, alternate number 1 and alternate number 2, as submitted by Vocal McWilliams Construction LLC in the amount of $6,652,000 for the additions and renovations at Lee Road Junior High School. I would just tell you that this is a new 10 classroom kindergarten building, renovation of the cafeteria and kitchen, and renovation of the 200 classroom wing. Alternate number 1 and 2 are both portions of an addition to the cafeteria dining room in different amounts of area, so that we end up with the largest amount by taking both alternate 1 and 2 to give them some more space for some more tables in that dining area.
Mr. Derman makes the motion to consider the bids for Lee Road. Yep, Mr. Loop has that second. Any comments from the public? Any from the board? Mr. Derman?
Ms. Tipton, exactly what was the alternate number 3?
Yes, sir. I didn't quite get to that. It was a clear-story structure at the commons area of the new kindergarten building, which would pop the roof up in that area and then add a band of windows over that commons area, and would provide natural lighting in that area, which we think is a very nice design element to have there. The only thing that caught our attention was the way the bids came in from the bidders. If you notice that the company that is low with alternate 1 and 2, as well as number 3, their bid is just much higher on that alternate number 3 item.
And what did we project the total, what we estimated that the project would be?
It is within our budget to accept all 3.
Okay.
If we choose, we have about 7
But the
million.
alternate number 3 really doesn't increase any square footage or of any type of utilizing space, just more.
It adds natural light into that space and adds some more volume to that area.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Ms. Tipton from the board? I don't see any. Let's please vote. That motion carries 12 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you.
Item B, Ms. Tipton.
Yes, sir. This is consideration of bids for Magnolia Trace Elementary School, St. Tammany Parish School Board number 1960. We received those bids this week on Tuesday, May 4th, and we are recommending acceptance of the low base bid, alternate 1, alternate number 2, and alternate number 3, as submitted by Thompson Construction Company in the amount of $15,339,000 for the additions at Magnolia Trace Elementary School. In this case, if you're familiar with Magnolia Trace, all of their classroom wings are modular. So this project will replace all of those modular wings with conventional construction. It will be a 2-story building. It'll have 45 classrooms. It'll also include a new library space, and their old library space will be renovated into their new music classroom. It will have to take place in phases because this building will sit where a lot of the modulars are now.
Mr. Betancourt makes that motion. Mr. Nation seconds that motion. Any comments from the public? Any comments from the board? Mr. Derman.
I'm sorry. Ms. Tipton, did you say it was going to remove all of the portables or
all
whatever we call them?
Yes, sir.
So that would be completely brick and mortar
Correct.
there at that school. Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Ms. Tipton. This is kind of more philosophical anyway. If you look at the total bids, we're going to accept base bid, alternate 1, 2, and 3.
Yes,
There's
sir.
a $1,000 difference
It is.
on a 15-some-odd million dollar project.
It's extremely close.
So, and I've mentioned this before, It's just kind of something that stuck in my craw a little bit because I looked at this and I was like, dang, that's $1,000 on a big project. And so I researched the firms, not knowing a great deal about them. Thompson is located in Homa or Thibodeau or something. Vocal McWilliams is right in our backyard with taxpayers. So and if you reevaluate alternate 1 and 2, they're the lowest bid. So how important is alternate 3? Is it, but
Well, let me tell you what the alternates are. And this is all work that is, the alternate 1 and 2 are renovations to the main existing building in the public areas. For instance, alternate 1 is at the entrance, lobby, and reception areas to renovate those areas and finishes. And then alternate 2 carries into the main connecting hallway, the multi-purpose room, and the cafeteria, those big public spaces, so that they will have finishes that connect into the new building, and we'll upgrade them and bring those finishes up to the same level and to match. And then alternate 3, this new building will be a U-shaped building that connects on the 2 legs back to the existing main building, and it creates a courtyard scenario. So the alternate number 3 is building out the courtyard to be outdoor classroom space, have shade sails, and finish out that area, so to speak. That's what alternate 3 is.
So there's no movement necessarily on any of this. This is, again, my only concern is trying to keep the business in our backyard, and I understand low bid procedure, but it was just like, God, this stood out unlike any that I've ever seen.
Yes, sir. It's a very close bid, even for a much smaller job. It's
Right.
It's very close, without a doubt.
Is there, okay. Mr. Betancourt.
So this hasn't been awarded yet, right? Because we have to approve it first.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Mr. Green, is there any interest in amending this and eliminating one of the alternates?
I mean, if that's a possibility, it would seem appropriate. But I mean.
Ms.
So
Tipton.
I guess what you would be eliminating, if you took away 3, you're eliminating finish the entire middle courtyard would be unfinished. It would be completely unfinished.
Well,
And we're talking about a main.
it will have some basic
Right, some basic stuff, right.
And
I mean,
yes, sir.
it's going to be very basic. It's not going to have any kind of outdoor classroom. It's going to have no structures that would finish the project off. It would be just basic structure. And I understand what you're saying, but both of these companies are very active in our district. It's not like we have not done business with either one of these firms. So I just want to be very clear. I understand your point. I totally understand your point. But it's not like they haven't been included in other bids during this entire process, and they're not been active in our district.
Mr. Green.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Nation.
Before we get ahead of ourselves, and I'm no expert on open bid law, but on bid law, but it seems to me either we have to, since these, and the attorneys can correct me if I'm wrong, we have to either accept, because everybody bid on the same projects. I mean, they bid on a package. So
Yeah,
either
so this is public, this is advertised for bid.
right. So either we have to,
companies
seems to me we either have to reject it outright and then go back and say, okay,
no,
we don't have to do that.
You could, I think where Mr. Green might be headed was suggesting that if you only accept the base bid and alternate 1 and 2, it changes who the low bidder is. You just would not be doing the alternate 3 work.
And that's okay. I mean, if I was the bidder, I would be pretty upset that, I agree with Mr. Green. I mean, actually, I do like having it, have it local. It's not a matter of disagreeing with his principle. I just think talking about opening ourselves up to lawsuits.
I mean, so basically, Title 38, when you deal with public bid law, it's very clear, and the preference is to accept all bids, reject all bids, or accept the lowest bid. When you start getting into amending, I kind of take a position that sometimes you should table it to re-clarify what you're doing, to allow all the bidders a fair opportunity to weigh in on it, let the public notice, be clear. This came up once before with a large project, and I was advising, like, don't amend the motion because you need to let all the bidders and the public know. So again, I'm going to err on the side of caution and defer to this board, but I guess my gut reaction, and I'm not giving a legal opinion because I'd need more information to study, is that basically accept the lowest bid, reject all bids for valid reasons. But when you get into amendment, I'd kind of err on the side of, like, let it be re-advertised, satisfy open meeting laws.
Within our budget.
Okay, and again, Ms. Tipton is very knowledgeable in this area. So it's one of these areas that almost I'd have to have all the evidence, which I don't have. And Ms. Tipton's very knowledgeable here. So I defer to her on the notice requirements and whether they've been satisfied.
I want to give the floor back to Mr. Betancourt. I apologize, sir. You're back.
He's back. All right, you explained alternate 3, how important that is. Would you please go into a little detail on alternate 2, if that was to disappear, and then also alternate 1, if that was to go disappear?
Alternate 1 is renovations to the main entrance lobby and to how the receptionist can see the front doorway area. And it also upgrades the finishes to look and be the same color scheme and what have you of the new addition. And alternate number 2 addresses the finishes in the main connecting hallway of the school, as well as in the cafeteria and the multipurpose areas, which are used a lot for public meetings and when they have gatherings there when we're not in COVID times. So that's about finishes, paint, flooring, ceilings, that kind of thing in those areas of the main building where it connects in to the new addition.
All right. I submit to Chairman Green that we could do without alternate 1, and I don't know what he wants to do about that.
Well, you can't accept if you're going, first you look at the base bid, which was to replace all of the classrooms, the modulars. That's our base scope of work. The alternate bids are additional work scopes that we take prices on. And by law, you take them in order unless it if it does not change who the low bidder would be, you could then pick and choose the alternates. But in this case, it changes who the low bidder would be if you're taking different alternates. So you have to take them in order if you're going to take the alternate scope of work bids. Does that make sense?
Sort of.
So we were recommending, because it's within the budget, that we do the base bid work and all the alternates. You could do base bid plus alternate 1, base bid plus alternate 1 and 2, base bid plus alternate 1, 2, 3. Those are your basic choices.
Okay. I was trying to get the information so that Mr. Green, if he had a choice that he wanted to make or whatever, I'm willing to accept it like it is, although I would love to keep as much of our construction projects local as possible. But I understand everybody gets a chance at a fair bid, and the low bidder wins. But thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Yes, based on the numbers here and what we're legally obligated to do, if we had the intention of awarding the bid to the more local company, we would have to accept the base bid and alternate 1 only.
No,
we would
sir.
have to drop
Alternate 1 and 2.
We could not drop 2?
Not if
We don't have to.
if we accepted the base bid and only alternate one,
Yes.
then the low bidder would be the second one here.
No, sir, it would be Thompson Construction.
If you sum base bid, alternate number 1 and alternate number 2, Vocal McWilliams would be lower.
Oh, that's right.
If you only
This is
did
a much
one.
higher number. Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to offer an amended motion that we consider only the base bid and alternate number 1 and alternate number 2.
I second.
Mr. Derman seconds that motion. Is there any public discussion? Is there any board discussion? Mr. Betancourt?
A question, this wouldn't fall into the category of bid rigging or whatever, would it?
No, sir, no.
Okay.
Ms. Baker?
I don't understand the purpose. I mean, if the purpose is to give the school the best of what we can give the school within our budget and it meets the budget, if we're only doing this for the purpose of trying to keep, and I'm all about it, I'm all about keeping local, but in respect of the open bid law, the public bid law, I'm more in favor of giving the school all that we can give them within our budget according to what the people, the public voted on for the bonds. So it's my recommendation that we accept the base bid 1, 2, and 3 for the sake of the kids and the teachers and the staff that go to that school, and why shouldn't they have the best of everything if we can afford it? That's just my thought.
Mr. Derman?
Ms. Baker, I appreciate your comments, but on the school that was in my area, we didn't do the other alternate, which was $218,000 because it was windows and aesthetics. So I don't see what the difference is. And I think I would much prefer to have a local contractor and local personnel oversee a job that's taxpayers' dollars. That's just my personal opinion. And it's totally legal because this was a public bid and each individual item is part of that bid. Is that not correct, Ms. Tipton?
That is my understanding, yes, sir.
So that whatever we elect as a board to accept would change who is actually the lowest qualified bidder, correct?
Yes, it would.
So if we take the base bid, alternate 1 and alternate 2, it would change who is the actual lowest bid on this job.
It does.
Thank you.
Mr. Brogue?
Yes, in this case, I agree with Ms. Baker in that we are depriving the school of some large number, $158,000 worth of improvement that they will not get in order to force the local bidder to win. It just smells to me. I'd rather the school get as much as they can and in one time, and rather than, it's unfortunate that the bids came out like they did, but it is what it is. And so I'm not in favor of chopping off alternate 3 just to reward the contract locally.
Now, all of these contractors will have many subcontractors and people and vendors and suppliers, no matter who the general contractor is.
Thank you. And so a couple of thoughts. Ms. Tipton, you were going where I was about to go, in the sense that, we're talking about the general contractor and this kind of the senior staff, so to speak, the senior level, but they're going to sub a lot of this out. Do we have any requirement that they buy locally? Or do we encourage them to buy locally? Because that's the other piece of it too. If they're buying all their materials locally, from local.
We won't know who the subcontractors are until we are under contract and they have finalized contracts. On bid day, they receive bids from many subcontractors and vendors. They're all looking for the best price to do the job as it is presented and drawn the scope of work. You would hope that any company that's closer by can maybe be pretty competitive because they're close to the job site or what have you. So we do see a fair number of local companies involved, often on jobs, but I can't know what the outcome will be from any of these contractors, no matter who.
Well, I
will
guess
be
I was
awarded
asking in
the
terms of
contract.
just general practice of all the construction projects we've had over the years. I mean, they tend to.
Certainly that would be something that we would hope for and hope to see, but I can't tell you that will be that.
Well, no, I'm not saying what will be. I'm saying what has been. They have a lot of these general contractors, even if they're not local, even if the general contractor's doesn't have a St. Tammany corporate address, they do sub out their work a lot to St. Tammany to subcontractors. Is that a fair statement?
They may, yeah, they could.
This one's a hard one because I think I agree with Mr. Rowe and Mr. Baker that we're denying the school and the children a nice courtyard because of we're wanting to force something to happen but I see the other side too. Is there anything we can do as a board in terms of encouraging or requiring the subcontract work and the purchase of materials to be local?
We certainly encourage it, but.
Well, I'm saying legally.
I think that's something we'd have to get legal counsel to answer or to look into for us.
I would be interested to know that because that would answer the concerns that we have in terms of keeping those dollars local.
Right.
And then,
we do indicate that we have a preference or that it would be encouraged, but again, I don't know that it will be that way necessarily until we see how they put their bid together and who their subcontractors are.
Gotcha. All right.
Mr. Winkler?
Ms. Tipton, didn't the number 2 bidder here have our Pearl River?
Yes, sir. They.
Which was about the same amount, 14 million.
Yes, sir. And they also did the Madisonville Elementary Edition.
So they're doing business in our parish. And what's going to happen is if we do this, are we going to have to look at all these like this and say, okay, which one's the local one? And, what can we take out to have the local? And another thing that's going to happen is Mr. Jabbia is going to have to go to this school and tell them, hey, by the way, you're not getting your third alternate. And I've had that happen in a thing. It doesn't go over good with the community. It's a no-win situation, and it makes us look bad too, because even these guys are going to get more bids, but we're saying, oh well, you guys are going to have to suffer because we're deciding. The community doesn't want this. I can tell you this right now. Where the kids are going to this school, they're not going to be happy, and they don't care who's getting the bid as long as it's done. Thank you.
This is a very competitive and a lot of bids received for a large project. And we've seen that on many of our bids that we've brought to y'all continuously recently. We've been very happy for the amount of turnout. It's not always that way. You certainly want the construction industry to continue to have interest in doing the work here, being competitive here, and providing us competitive pricing on our projects.
Thank you. Mr. Kuzan.
I just think we should keep the bid as we have it and not change anything. I just feel like we recommendations of alternates 1, 2, and 3 should be what we should vote on, and not just do changes because it will reflect bad on this board if we're gonna do something different. We should do as we've done in the past and vote the same way that we have in the past. Now, changing this time, I don't think would be the correct thing to do. I agree with Ms. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzan. Mr. Betancourt.
Ms. Tipton, run that by me again if you would. This Thompson Construction is based in Houma?
They're in Thibodeau.
Thibodeau?
Is their where their offices are.
Okay.
They're currently building the Mandeville High additions.
Okay, well, I'm just wondering, there's not too many carpenters or whatever that are gonna commute from Thibodeau every day when this job commences. Most of the, and you touched on subcontractors, and Mr. Nation mentioned it, now would be local for a large part. So this company, in all probability, is gonna hire numerous local people, craftsmen or whatever,
It's possible.
and maybe some of the
Depends on-
same ones that are at Mandeville would come over to this job or something as Mandeville finishes up or something. So a lot of the money is gonna stay local. Just kind of rethinking that, and maybe, Vocal McWilliams just needs to sharpen their pencil by $1,000. Thank you.
You flip-flopping on me again, Mr. Betancourt? I can kid with Mr. Betancourt. Okay, so we have a motion that we recommend acceptance of the low base bid, alternate 1 and alternate 2, not alternate 3. That is the motion on the floor. We do have a second. We've had public and board comment, so let's please vote on that motion.
That's not what's up there.
Yeah, it should just read low base bid, alternate 1 and alternate 2.
And it would be that would be submitted by Vocal McWilliams.
And then just for point of clarity, if this fails, then we need to go back to the original motion, correct? Or the original recommendation from Ms. Tipton.
That's correct. And forgive me, but was there public comment allowed before?
There was. Before board comment, I asked for public comment and there was none. Okay.
So we vote.
We're not voting on what's on the screen though.
We vote on just 1 and 2. Put it up. So I can vote no.
Voting on to amend, to accept base bid and alternate 1 and 2.
Submitted by Vocal McWilliams.
I can add that later, but it's
And
amended to accept base bid and alternate 1 and 2. Correct.
If that fails, we gotta go back to that one anyway.
Right now.
So you're voting on to keep just 1 and 2 only.
Right.
1 and 2 only, but that's what it is. She's amending it right now, but that's what it is.
It does say amend.
That's good. We leave it. You got 'em all?
As long as we're all on the same page here, what we're voting on, because the last sentence, amend to accept the base bid and alternate 1 and 2 submitted by Vocal McWilliams might clear it up, but.
Mr. Jambier, could we adjust the motion and stuff tomorrow so we can go ahead?
You get it set. We can make the change as long as everyone's clear on what we're doing.
Just explain what you're voting.
Just, Matt, if you want to just, let me just state what it is we'll need for the record.
Can I state it with the right amounts?
Sure.
So it would be that you're recommending or the acceptance of the low base bid plus alternate 1 and alternate 2 submitted by Vocal McWilliams Construction in the amount of $15,167,000.
Better vote. What's up then?
I move that we accept the recommendation to approve the low bidder for the contract.
Mr. Bro makes a motion that we recommend accepting the low base bid, alternate 1, 2, and 3 submitted by Thompson Construction. It's a mic on, probably. And Ms. Page seconds that motion. Do we have any public comment? Ms. Barrios.
So I really don't remember you asking for public comment after you made the alternate motion, but I can go back and look at the tape on that, but I'll make it anyway. Either way, maybe it'll make you feel better. I don't know that Mr. Vocal, I'm sure he does a lot of work out of district too. I'm sure they all do. And I don't know that he would want to put himself in a position, or for you all to put him in a position where it's sort of a war of inside, outside the district. So in other words, a reputation of, well, I work inside, I get all the work in the district. And when I go outside the district, guess what? The tables might turn on him. So I'm not so sure that just for $1,000 that was, I think you made the right choice. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Barrios. Democracy prevails. Mr. Escamilla.
I'll just be really quick in saying that was legitimately the sort of strangest conversation I've ever witnessed as an educator. Like, as a teacher, I don't care who gets me out of a portable, who builds the courtyards. As a parent, I don't care who gets me out of a portable and who builds the courtyards. As long as my kid has a clean, safe, high quality facility to go to. And to some of the points that were made, I have, pleasure would be the wrong statement. I worked on a construction crew one summer, and we went to a lot of places locally, but our general contractor, our boss, wasn't local. We were hired to do the jobs in our area. Most contracting crews are. And so when you're voting, you're voting to give students what they need on campus, give teachers what they need on campus, or not. And it seemed like the priority was sort of skewed during that conversation. So I'm glad that it didn't prevail, and hopefully this one does.
Any other comments from the public? Any from the board? Okay, let's please vote. And that motion carries unanimously. Ms. Tipton, the construction report.
Thank you. The contractor has mobilized on site at Little Oak Middle School and has begun clearing the access road area. The contractor for Folsom Elementary School renovations and additions project has set the temporary modular buildings in place and is working on the utility connections, special systems, and has also started building the walkways. The contractor for the artificial turf field started work at North Shore High School this week and plans to also get started on Slidell High and Covington High in the next few days. The old library building at Abita Middle School has been demolished, and the contractor will resume work there as soon as testing is completed at the school. The contractor for the Fifth Ward Junior High School project is pouring the building slab tomorrow morning. The temporary modular wing for the North Shore High School project is complete, and 2 of the classes from the portable classroom buildings have been moved into that new modular classroom, which is temporary setup. And the contractor will begin some demolition work on those 2 portable buildings. And the other portable buildings, those classes and portables will be addressed as soon as the school year ends. At Covington Elementary School, the roof deck is being installed at the main portion of the building. The roofing on the low deck is scheduled to start next week. The brick mason is on site and that work is underway. Plumbing and electrical work inside the building is progressing. Lancaster addition is still progressing really well. The metal deck for the roof is installed. Windows are being installed. The mechanical and electrical work has passed inspections on the first floor. The chiller has been put in place and brickwork is scheduled to start. At Madisonville Elementary, the contractor is working on the underground drainage structures for the new parking lot. The Salmon High welding shop and classroom project is complete, and the contractor is finishing up some punch list items, and we're waiting on some equipment deliveries. At Mandeville High, they're in the process of final inspections and furniture is being delivered next week. A pre-construction meeting for Covington High School additions project is scheduled for the week of May 17th. And the contractor that's working on the infrastructure for the temporary modular buildings is working on the electrical and special systems. The contractor for the Florida Avenue Elementary renovations projects anticipates mobilizing on site in a couple of weeks ahead of the end of the school year. The pre-construction meeting for the Bayou Woods additions project was held this morning, and that work will start at the end of the school year as well. Capital improvement projects overall are continuing to progress well. We're reviewing the Abney Elementary additions project and the Cypress Cove additions project final documents, and the Fountain Blue High project documents are in review by the parish government process. We're working with the contractors and preparing for the summer work. They'll start as soon as school year ends in the next few weeks. So be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Tipton. Mr. Nation.
Just hopefully a quick question, and Ms. Tipton, we can discuss this offline, but obviously, inflation is creeping in and construction costs have gone through the roof. How's that affecting your budgeting in terms of, just simply wood prices for if nothing else?
Certainly, we're all concerned about that. We do notice on all the projects that the contractors are really trying to get their orders placed very early and as quickly as possible in order to try to not have as much delivery issue as we hear there can be. I think today, seeing the bids that we got that were very competitive, they're still within our budget. Those are good signs, but we're certainly concerned to know how that will creep in or affect things, without a doubt. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board for Ms. Tipton? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is the monthly internal auditor report. Mr. Incaprera is here. Are there any questions from the board on that report? No? Okay. I'd like to invite Ms. Prevost. Oh, there you are.
Thank you.
You can stay right there. Ms. Prevost.
I have provided you with a resolution for the first item to levy our ad valorem millages for tax year 2021 for a total of 62 mills. This is the same amount as last year, so there's no recommended rollback or roll forward. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Mr. Nation makes that motion. I'd like to second it. Are there any comments or questions from the public? None? Any questions for Ms. Prevost from the board? No? Let's vote, please. That motion carries unanimously. Moving on to revisions to the job description. Ms. Prevost.
Okay, I've provided you with a revised job description for the purchasing director. As part of the superintendent's reorganization plan, the title of this position will change from director to supervisor of purchasing. Also, the report to line has been changed to reflect my new title as of July 1st, Chief Financial Officer. There are no other changes to the job description, and the old job description was provided to you. The reason I'm asking for this now is Ms. Stevens is retiring effective July 1st. So we'd like to go ahead and start advertising this position later in May.
Mr. Kuzan makes that motion. Mr. Betancourt seconds that motion. Any discussion from the public? Any from the board? I'd just like to say I've always thought of you as a CFO, so of our school system.
Thank you.
Whether you've had the official title or not. Our next item, Ms. Prevost. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to vote on that. It's 10 o'clock. Okay. I thought I asked for public, and I did, didn't I? No. That motion carries unanimously. Item C.
Okay, I provided you with a copy of the proposed salary schedule for fiscal 2021, 2022. A few highlights. All employees will be given a two-step increase for July 1st. This increase was approved by the Federation by agreement on February 11th. Certificated personnel will receive a $1,000 increase to base salary, and support personnel will receive a $7 increase to base salary. We've also included a supplemental pay rate chart. This chart includes the supplemental pay rates for the accelerated summer camp in the back. We need those approved for the federal funding. So those are included on page 95. The salary schedule also includes all the changes from the superintendent's reorganization as far as titles and percentages. That was all included. And we also went ahead and included the proposed MFP pay raises of $400 for certificated personnel and $200 support personnel. We kind of rolled the dice because we thought it was a done deal, but now they've come back and they're potentially going to increase those raises to $1,000 for certificated and $500 support personnel. So if that occurs, we'll have to bring the schedule back to you before July 1st for that change.
Do I have a motion? Ms. Baker makes a motion to accept that salary schedule. Mr. Harrell seconds that motion. Do I have any public comments? None. Do I have any comments from the board? Seeing none, let's please vote. And that motion carries unanimously. The financial report, Ms. Prevost.
I provided you with the monthly financial report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions? Our purchasing report.
Ms. Stevens is here to answer any questions on that report.
Any questions for Ms. Stevens? I don't see any. Mr. Harrell, announcements.
I've waited all night for this. Thank you. Mr. Green. Board retreat training will be held on Saturday, May 8th at 10 a.m. at Treen, and we won't be voting on anything at that meeting or at that training. The May board meeting will be held on Thursday, May 13th at 6 p.m. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And with no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Don't y'all